Okay, so
Well,
thank you very much. I just got a few slides that I'll quickly share about what we've been doing at McGill, and it's very much what I've been doing at McGill. And I think this points to a broader issue that at universities, what we're doing on serious games in a couple of cases, obviously Concordia, Waterloo, we have sort of broader institutes or networks, but often it's very idiosyncratic or serendipitous, or you don't even know what your colleagues are doing in other departments. And I think increasingly, and this is good in many ways, our collaboration is vertical with colleagues we're electronically joined to around the world and not horizontal. So there are people in this room that I have seen on Zoom probably 100 times more than I've seen some of my departmental colleagues over the last 2 years. I like my departmental colleagues. That's not necessarily good, but the thought that we work as universities, as single institutions, I think is something that's become really completely alien to the way I work, and I think a lot of others work. So I'm going to start with my conflict simulation course, because we are one of the few universities in the world that is teaching wargaming and wargaming adjacent things. So I have an upper level course on conflict simulation that includes both military conflict and non-military conflict, since politics is really about conflict. I currently have 38 students, and that's essentially the max because we're at a room capacity for the room I use. I will point out that 2/3 of my students are women. So the demographic of students who want to study wargaming and conflict at university is very different than the hobby, which is 97 to 99% male, and very different even from the defense space, where it's about 15% female. Many of those students do have no background in gaming whatsoever. In fact, I'm lucky if I have 1 or 2 war gamers in the class. They all do have an intense interest in conflict. As I say, whether that's armed conflict or other kinds of political conflict. That course is a mixture of lectures and game labs and optional games and speakers. It is very much a manual game design course. It's not a digital game design course for a variety of reasons. I also use games and simulations in other courses, notably my peace building course. Obviously, as my colleagues will know, COVID-19 has dramatically affected us. It sort of rolled the dice on a 5 or 6 year remote teaching, 1 or 2 year in the classroom, and 3 and 4 year hybrid. And we often don't know in advance, as we didn't know for this term. It keeps changing. So that's had impact, but I must say students are extraordinarily adaptable at moving between physical and digital spaces and back again. So that really hasn't hampered it. It's created more work for me. These are the projects for this year. I'm not going to go through them, but I just wanted to give you a sense of the kinds of things students are working on. In fact, we have fewer kinetic armed conflict game projects this year than usual. So the red ones are the very kinetic war games, Ukraine war, the insurgency in Mozambique. The orange ones have got a significant warfare component to them. So one on Han Dynasty China, one on hostage rescue and negotiation. Then 4 games that are conflict adjacent. So 2 of them about refugees and internally displaced, 1 about the sort of impact of war, the intersectional impact of war as mediated by class and gender, and 1 on doing journalism in war-torn environments. And then 3 that are on conflict, but nothing to do with the military, 1 of them on pandemics and 2 of them on environmental issues. So that's the sample of games we have. Some of the people involved in these games are watching this at the moment, and there's some really excellent ideas emerging as they develop their game ideas. I've also been doing, as you would expect, lots of other game stuff. I participated in all the NATO SAS 151 influence war games and play tests, and I'm quite pleased with my record in those games, although they looks a bit eerily close to a situation that, even though it's a fictional country, it looks a bit like something happening right now. I was part of the team that in late 2020 did the red teaming and TTX to support Canada's COVID-19 vaccine rollout. And we've done some follow-up research, Ben Taylor at DRDC and I, on how effective that was. And we're very pleased with that. And indeed, we've got other public health officials now talking to us about doing more of that to think about the end of the pandemic, or getting much worse, because of course the epidemiologists are waiting for the next version of COVID to be significantly worse, and potentially. I've also been doing other digital gaming to support epidemic disease response. So I have done digital gaming stuff before as a consultant to game companies, but this not really in the design space quite so much. So this has been interesting because the budget for a single project exceeds the total budget of every manual game I've ever done in my life for policy support. So we're orders of magnitude different. So the Ready initiative has just soft launched. The hard launch is coming up very soon, a digital game to train humanitarian team leaders in outbreak response. You'll find the game is playable already on their website. And I'm also on the WHO's GORN working group on online gaming, which has just started working on essentially the same kind of task. Plus, you all know I'm involved in PackSims. Now, we've only got 1 minute left, but this gets back to a point I said at the beginning. I have other colleagues doing stuff at McGill, but as an example of how disconnected we can be, the Steinberg Center for Simulation and Interactive Learning at McGill has 27 full-time simulation employees, 31,000 feet, and teaches 18,000 people a year with simulation-based learning. It is, for those of you who know Montreal, it's in the McGill ghetto. It's in the underground floor of Galerie du Parc. And I don't know how many times I walked over it without knowing that there were 31,000 feet of simulation space down there until I saw it on a McGill press release. And as all academics know, we never read our own university's press releases. They just go straight into the junk file usually because there's so many of them. So they do some really terrific work. Lots of robots, but lots of really clever role play stuff. Two-way mirrors and entire fake apartment buildings. They've got cameras everywhere and apartment complexes and so forth. Individual faculty, the schools of computer science, faculty and education working on games. And I'm in a department where quite a few colleagues use games in the classroom. It's a not unusual thing in political science. So that's just, we are really literally out of time, but that's what we've been doing at McGill.
Thanks, Rex.
I'll answer Kevin's question. I don't know what's going to happen about the Connections North 2023 mega game, but at some point we'll be back to running giant games in person.
There was also a question, and I realize we're right at 1:30, so I guess if people want to stick around and just hear a couple of questions, you can feel free, but we're not going to force you. But the question from Neil was, how do you deal with the problem in the class that playing a game takes a long time? So how do you handle that?
The way I run games is students have to play a certain number of games outside class time, and they're getting credited for playing the games. And I'm either running those in person or now, frankly, I run them online usually. So there's a Vassal module or something else for it. And then they have a points weight in order to make sure that most of them show up for the games that are more important for their design. And I reduce the amount of lecture time they have in the classroom. So they're actually super, super keen. So I do actually have a lot of students showing up on a Saturday night or on a Friday in the middle of the day. I don't schedule those around class time because there's enough things they can do over the term that they can max out their course grade quite easily. And there's also stuff that they can download and play and provide proof of play that will get credited. But it is an issue. I wouldn't have enough time to run the games in class time.
And I'm not seeing any more questions coming in, and I think that's probably closer because it's lunchtime or break time. But I'm going to just say that Rex is generally open to questions. And is pretty good at responding, much better in terms of timely response than I am. So yeah, I think if there's anything, probably just post things or send to him, and I'm sure you'll get a response.